February 24, 2001. Kaiserslautern, Germany. A Saturday night that should have been ordinary. A train platform that thousands of people cross every week without a second thought. And a woman who simply ceased to exist. Louise Kerton was a British nurse, 23 years old, working at a military hospital in Germany. On that Saturday night, she was returning from a night out in the city. She was seen on surveillance cameras. She was captured on film. And then she was gone. Not missing in the way someone gets lost in a crowd. Not delayed or confused or taking a wrong turn. Gone in a way that defies explanation. Because Louise Kerton disappeared from a busy train station, surrounded by other passengers, with cameras recording, with witnesses nearby, and no one saw what happened. Here's what makes this case so disturbing. Louise didn't vanish from a dark alley or an isolated road. She disappeared from infrastructure, from civilization, from a place designed to be monitored, to be safe, to be controlled. Train stations have schedules. They have security. They have records of who comes and who goes. But on that night, all of that meant nothing. The questions that have haunted this case for over 2 decades are simple, and they are terrible. Where did Louise go between the moment she was last seen and the moment she should have boarded her train? Who, if anyone, was with her? And why has not a single trace of her ever been found? This is not a story about a woman who wanted to disappear. This is a story about a woman who was disappeared, and the difference matters. To understand what was lost that night, you have to understand who Louise Kerton really was. Not just a missing person case. Not just a photograph on a poster or a name in a database. A real human being with a real life, with plans and dreams and people who loved her. Louise was born in Suffolk, England in 1977. She grew up in the quiet Suffolk countryside, in a family that was close-knit and stable. Her childhood was, by all accounts, happy. She was described by those who knew her as warm, outgoing, and fiercely independent. The kind of person who made friends easily and kept them. From a young age, Louise knew she wanted to help people. It wasn't a vague aspiration. It was concrete. She wanted to be a nurse. And so she pursued that dream with the kind of determination that people who knew her said was typical of her character. She completed her nursing training and qualified as a registered nurse. She was good at her job, compassionate, competent, reliable. But Louise also had a sense of adventure. She didn't want to spend her entire life in one place doing the same thing. She wanted to see the world, to experience different cultures, to challenge herself. And so when the opportunity came to work as a civilian nurse at a British military hospital in Germany, she took it. In 2000, Louise moved to Germany. She was stationed at a medical facility that served British military personnel and their families. The work was demanding but rewarding. She was living abroad, earning her own money, building a life for herself. She shared accommodation with other nurses and staff. She made friends, she went out, she lived. Those who knew Louise during this period describe her as someone who was thriving. She wasn't homesick, she wasn't depressed, she wasn't struggling. She was a young woman in her early 20s, doing meaningful work, enjoying her independence. She called her family regularly. She talked about her plans. She talked about the future. There were no warning signs, no red flags, no indication that anything was wrong. Louise had a boyfriend at the time. He was also British, also working in Germany. Their relationship was described as stable and happy. They spent time together. They went out together. There were no reports of arguments, no signs of trouble. Just a normal, healthy relationship between two young people. She had a routine. During the week, she worked at the hospital. On weekends, she socialized. She went into Kaiserslautern, the nearest city, to meet friends, to go to bars and clubs, to unwind. It was a routine that thousands of young people in Germany follow every weekend. Unremarkable. Safe. Or so it seemed. Louise was not reckless. She was not naive. She was a trained medical professional, someone who understood risk, who made careful decisions. She was not the type of person to get into a car with a stranger or to put herself in obvious danger. Those who knew her emphasized this point again and again. Louise was sensible. Louise was smart. And yet, on February 24, 2001, something happened to her that defies all sense and all safety. To understand this case, you have to understand the environment in which it happened. Germany in 2001. Kaiserslautern in 2001. What kind of place was this? What kind of risks existed? Kaiserslautern is a city in the Rhineland-Palatinate region of southwestern Germany. It's not a major metropolis like Berlin or Munich, but it's not a tiny village either. In 2001, it had a population of around 100,000 people. It's a city with a long history, dating back to Roman times. But in the modern era, it's perhaps best known for one thing: its American military presence. Kaiserslautern is home to one of the largest concentrations of American military personnel outside the United States. Ramstein Air Base, the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, and numerous other U.S. military installations are located in and around the city. This has shaped the character of Kaiserslautern in profound ways. It's a place where cultures mix, where English is widely spoken, where American and British service members and their families form a significant part of the population. For someone like Louise, a British civilian working for the military, Kaiserslautern was familiar in some ways. There were other British and American people around. There were English language services, international communities. It wasn't like being completely isolated in a foreign country. But it's important to understand that this international military-influenced character also created certain vulnerabilities. Kaiserslautern, like many cities with large military populations, had a nightlife scene that catered to soldiers and young service members. Bars, clubs, places where people went to drink, to meet people, to blow off steam. And where there are military populations, there are also, historically, higher rates of certain crimes. Not necessarily violent crime, but crimes related to transient populations, to alcohol, to young men far from home. Germany in 2001 was generally a safe country. But no place is completely safe. It's also worth noting that in 2001, surveillance technology was not what it is today. CCTV existed, but it was lower quality, less widespread, less sophisticated. The footage was often grainy, difficult to analyze. Digital technology was still emerging. This would prove crucial in Louise's case. The broader context of Europe in 2001 also matters. This was before widespread smartphone use, before social media, before GPS tracking and constant digital connectivity. If you wanted to reach someone, you called their landline or their basic mobile phone. If you wanted to meet someone, you arranged it in advance. There was no texting your location, no sharing your GPS coordinates, no posting in real time where you were. This seems like a minor detail, but it's not, because it means that when Louise disappeared, there was no digital trail to follow, no Facebook check-ins, no Instagram stories, no text message record showing who she might have been communicating with in the hours before she vanished. The investigation would have to rely on old-fashioned detective work, witnesses, physical evidence, camera footage, and as we'll see, that wasn't enough. The week leading up to February 24th was by all accounts completely normal for Louise. She went to work. She fulfilled her nursing duties. She talked to colleagues. She made plans for the weekend. There were no reported arguments, no conflicts, no strange incidents. Louise wasn't behaving oddly. She wasn't withdrawing from friends. She wasn't expressing fear or concern about anything. She was simply living her life. On Friday, February 23rd, the day before she disappeared, Louise worked her shift at the hospital. Everything was routine. She finished her work, went home, and prepared for the weekend. Saturday, February 24th started normally. Louise had plans to go out that evening with friends. This was typical for her. She enjoyed socializing, going into Kaiserslautern to the bars and clubs, meeting up with other British and international young people who lived and worked in the area. According to later reports, Louise spent the afternoon and early evening getting ready, talking to friends, making arrangements for the night out. There was no indication that anything was wrong. No last-minute changes of plan, no unusual phone calls. Just an ordinary Saturday. The plan for the evening was straightforward. Louise and her friends would take the train into Kaiserslautern, go to some bars and clubs, and then return later that night. The train system in Germany is efficient and reliable. It's how thousands of people travel every day. There was no reason to think this night would be any different. But here's something that investigators would later focus on. Louise's exact plans for the evening are not entirely clear. Different witnesses gave slightly different accounts of where she was supposed to be, who she was supposed to meet, what time she was supposed to arrive. This wasn't because anyone was lying. It was because plans among young people on a Saturday night are often fluid. You might say you'll meet at one bar, but then you end up at another. You might plan to catch one train, but then you stay out later and catch a different one. This fluidity, this lack of rigid structure, would later make it harder for investigators to establish a clear timeline, because when someone goes missing, every detail matters. Every minute is important. And if no one is quite sure exactly where someone was supposed to be, it becomes much harder to identify the moment when things went wrong. February 24th, 2001. Evening. Louise left her accommodation and headed to the train station to catch a train into Kaiserslautern. She was dressed for a night out. Not extravagantly, but appropriately for someone planning to go to bars and clubs. She had her essentials with her. Some money, her ID, her keys. She took the train into the city. This part of the evening is documented. Louise was seen by other passengers. She arrived in Kaiserslautern without incident. What happened next has been pieced together from multiple witness accounts, from friends who were with her, from people who saw her that night. Louise went to several different venues in Kaiserslautern. She met up with friends. She had drinks. She socialized. By all accounts, she was having a good time. She wasn't drinking excessively. She wasn't upset or distressed. She was just enjoying a night out, the way she had done many times before. As the night wore on, Louise and her friends moved between different bars and clubs. This was normal behavior for a Saturday night in Kaiserslautern. The venues were clustered in the city center, within walking distance of each other. Young people would bar hop, moving from place to place, meeting different groups of friends. But at some point during the evening, Louise became separated from the main group of friends she had arrived with. Again, this is not unusual. In a crowded bar or club, people drift apart. You go to the bathroom. You step outside for fresh air. You run into someone else you know and stop to chat. Plans shift and change organically. Some witnesses reported seeing Louise later in the evening at a specific nightclub called Estragon. Others weren't sure. The exact timeline of where Louise was and when becomes murky at this point. Not because anyone was trying to hide anything, but because people's memories of nights out, especially after drinking, are often imprecise. What is known is that Louise intended to catch a train back to her accommodation. She needed to get to the train station, board a train, and travel back. She had done this journey many times before. It was routine. And this is where the case becomes truly haunting. Because Louise did make it to the train station. She was there. She was seen. She was captured on surveillance cameras. But she never made it onto the train. Kaiserslautern Hauptbahnhof, the main train station, a hub of transportation, a place of constant movement. Even late at night, there are people there, passengers waiting for trains, staff on duty, security personnel. It's not isolated. It's not deserted. Louise arrived at the station in the early hours of February 25th. The exact time has been reported differently by various sources, but it was somewhere between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. She needed to catch a train back to where she was living. Here's what we know happened, based on surveillance footage and witness accounts. Louise was at the station. She was seen on the platform area. She appeared to be alone at this point, though other passengers were present in the station. The surveillance cameras at Kaiserslautern train station in 2001 were basic. The footage quality was poor by modern standards. Grainy, black and white, with limited coverage of all areas. But they captured enough to show that Louise was there. And then, nothing. Louise did not board a train. She did not leave through the main exit. She did not appear on any subsequent camera footage from that night. She simply vanished from the recorded evidence. Now, it's crucial to understand what this means and what it doesn't mean. The cameras didn't cover every single square meter of the station. There were blind spots. There were areas that weren't monitored. So when we say Louise vanished from the footage, it doesn't mean she literally disappeared into thin air. It means she moved into an area that wasn't covered by cameras. But where? And why? And with whom, if anyone? The trains that night ran on schedule. The platform she would have needed to use for her journey was identified, but Louise was not seen boarding any train. Her name did not appear on any ticket records. Though it's worth noting that in 2001, many train tickets in Germany were not personalized. You could buy a ticket and use it without your name being recorded. So the absence of a ticket record doesn't necessarily mean she didn't buy a ticket. It just means there's no proof that she did. Other passengers who were at the station that night were later interviewed. Some remembered seeing a young woman who might have been Louise. But memories were vague. It was late. People were tired. Many had been drinking. No one reported seeing anything obviously wrong or suspicious. No one saw Louise being grabbed or forced to go anywhere. No one heard her scream or call for help. No one witnessed a confrontation or an argument. If something happened to Louise at that train station, it happened quietly, invisibly, in a way that attracted no attention. And that is terrifying. Louise didn't come home that night. When morning came and she still wasn't back, concern began to grow. Her housemates and colleagues noticed her absence. At first, there might have been innocent explanations. Maybe she'd stayed with a friend. Maybe she'd missed the last train and found somewhere else to sleep. These things happen. But as the hours passed, and Louise still didn't appear, and still didn't contact anyone, the concern turned to worry, and the worry turned to fear. Phone calls were made. Friends were contacted. Had anyone seen Louise? Did anyone know where she was? The answers were all the same. No one knew. No one had heard from her. Louise's boyfriend was contacted. He hadn't seen her. He didn't know where she was. He was worried, too. The decision was made to contact the police. Louise Kerton was officially reported missing. The German authorities were notified. Because Louise was a British citizen working for the military, British authorities were also informed. This would become an international missing persons case. But here's a crucial problem. By the time Louise was reported missing, valuable hours had already passed. The trail was already cold. If something had happened to her at the train station, the scene was long gone. The other passengers who had been there that night had dispersed. The opportunity to immediately lock down the scene and interview witnesses was lost. This is not a criticism of Louise's friends or family. They did what anyone would do. They gave her the benefit of the doubt. They hoped for innocent explanations. But in missing persons cases, time is everything, and every hour that passes makes it harder to find someone. The German police treated Louise's disappearance seriously from the start. This wasn't dismissed as a young woman who had simply wandered off or decided to leave voluntarily. The circumstances were too concerning for that. A missing persons investigation was launched. Officers were assigned to the case. The last known sighting of Louise was identified as the train station. And so that's where the investigation focused. The surveillance footage from Kaiserslautern Hauptbahnhof was obtained and reviewed. This footage confirmed that Louise had been at the station, but it also revealed how limited the coverage was. The cameras showed Louise arriving, showed her in certain areas of the station, and then showed nothing. She moved out of camera range and was never seen again. Investigators tried to trace her movements. They identified which platform she would have needed for her train. They checked ticket records, though, as mentioned, these were largely unhelpful. They interviewed station staff who had been on duty that night. No one remembered seeing anything unusual. Other passengers who had been at the station during the relevant time period were sought out and interviewed. This was a massive task. How do you find people who happened to be at a train station on a particular night weeks or months ago? Some people came forward after appeals for witnesses. Others were traced through ticket records where available. But many could never be identified. Those who were interviewed provided fragments of information, but nothing conclusive. Some remembered seeing a young woman who might have been Louise, but the descriptions were vague, the memories uncertain. It was late at night. The station was dimly lit. People were focused on catching their own trains, not on observing others. No one reported seeing Louise leave the station with anyone. No one saw her being approached by a stranger. No one witnessed anything that looked like an abduction or a struggle. The area around the train station was searched. Bins, storage areas, any place where someone could be hidden or where evidence might be discarded. Nothing was found. The train tracks themselves were searched. This was a grim but necessary task. If Louise had, for any reason, fallen or jumped onto the tracks, there would be evidence. But no such evidence was found. Neighboring towns and cities were alerted. Hospitals were checked in case Louise had suffered some kind of medical emergency or accident and been admitted unconscious. Morgues were checked. Nothing. Louise's accommodation was searched, not because she was suspected of anything, but because investigators needed to understand if she had taken anything with her, if there were any clues to her plans or state of mind. Her belongings were all there. Her passport was there. She had taken only what she would normally take for a night out. There was no indication she had planned to leave permanently or to go anywhere other than back home after her night out. Her financial records were examined. Her bank account showed no activity after her disappearance. No withdrawals, no purchases. If Louise was alive somewhere, she wasn't using her bank card. Her phone records were obtained. This was one of the most important lines of investigation. Who had Louise been in contact with? Had she called or texted anyone from the train station? The record showed her normal pattern of calls and messages, but nothing unusual on the night she disappeared. No calls from the station. No texts sent in the early hours of February 25th. Her phone, like Louise herself, went silent. As days turned into weeks, the investigation expanded. German police worked with British military authorities and British police. Because Louise was a British citizen, her disappearance was a matter of concern for UK authorities as well. Appeals for information were made. Louise's photograph was distributed to media outlets in Germany and the UK. Her face appeared on news broadcasts, in newspapers, on missing persons posters. The public was asked, if you saw Louise Kerton on the night of February 24th, if you were at Kaiserslautern train station, if you have any information at all, please come forward. Some tips came in. Some were credible, some were not. All had to be investigated. Someone reported seeing a woman matching Louise's description in a different city. Police followed up. It wasn't her. Someone else reported seeing her getting into a car. Police investigated. The lead went nowhere. This is the reality of missing persons investigations. You chase every lead, no matter how thin, because you never know which one might be the one that breaks the case. But most leads evaporate. Most tips turn out to be mistaken identity, or well-meaning but inaccurate memories. Specialist search teams were brought in. Areas around Kaiserslautern were searched. Woodland, fields, bodies of water. If Louise had been taken somewhere and harmed, there might be evidence. But the searches found nothing. Dive teams searched rivers and lakes. Again, nothing. The investigation looked into Louise's personal life, not because she was suspected of wrongdoing, but because understanding a missing person's relationships and circumstances can provide crucial clues. Was there anyone who might have wanted to harm her? Were there any disputes or conflicts in her life? The answer, overwhelmingly, was no. Louise had no enemies. She had no known conflicts with anyone. Her relationship with her boyfriend was stable. Her relationships with friends and colleagues were positive. There was no apparent motive for anyone to want to hurt her. Investigators also considered the possibility that Louise might have chosen to disappear voluntarily, but this theory made no sense. She had taken nothing with her. She had left all her belongings. She had given no indication to anyone that she was unhappy or wanted to leave. She had plans, responsibilities, a life she was engaged with. And crucially, she has never used her passport, never accessed her bank account, never made contact with anyone. If someone disappears voluntarily, they usually leave some trace eventually. Louise has left none. As Louise's case gained media attention, it became a story that gripped both Germany and the UK. A young British nurse, vanishing without a trace from a train station in Germany. It had all the elements that make a case compelling to the public. A sympathetic victim, a mysterious disappearance, an unsettling location, unanswered questions. British newspapers covered the story extensively. The disappearance of a British citizen abroad always generates coverage, but Louise's case had particular resonance. She was young, she was doing meaningful work, she was living abroad in what should have been a safe situation. She could have been anyone's daughter, anyone's sister, anyone's friend. German media also covered the case, though perhaps with less intensity. Kaiserslautern's international community paid close attention. For the British and American military personnel and civilians living in the area, Louise's disappearance was a frightening reminder of vulnerability. Louise's family gave interviews, appealing for information, pleading for anyone who knew anything to come forward. Her mother, her father, her siblings spoke to journalists, describing Louise, talking about who she was, what she meant to them. They kept her name in the public eye. They refused to let her become just another statistic. But media attention is a double-edged sword. It can generate valuable leads. It can keep pressure on investigators. But it can also generate noise, misinformation, unhelpful speculation. People who had no real information felt compelled to offer theories. Armchair detectives proposed elaborate scenarios. None of it brought Louise home. The coverage also brought attention to other missing persons cases. Louise was not the only person who had vanished in Germany during this period. Comparisons were made to other cases, some similar, some not. Investigators looked for connections, for patterns. Was there a serial predator operating in the area? Were there other disappearances that might be linked to Louise's? No definitive connections were found. Each case had its own unique circumstances, but the possibility could not be entirely ruled out. In the absence of answers, theories emerged, some based on evidence, some based on speculation, some based on nothing more than imagination. But when a case is as mysterious as Louise's, people want explanations. They need explanations. The human mind resists the idea of randomness, of unknowability. This is perhaps the most widely believed theory, and the one that investigators have focused on most seriously. The idea is that Louise was approached by someone at the train station, someone with harmful intent. Perhaps she was abducted. Perhaps she was attacked. Perhaps she was lured away under false pretenses. Supporting this theory, Louise was at a train station late at night, a place where vulnerable people can be targeted. She was alone, or appeared to be alone. She may have been tired, possibly affected by alcohol, potentially less alert than usual. Train stations, despite being public spaces, have areas that are isolated, particularly late at night. Loading bays, parking areas, service corridors. Someone who knew the station well could exploit these areas. The surveillance footage shows Louise at the station but doesn't show her leaving safely. She didn't board a train. She didn't leave through monitored exits. This suggests she left through an unmonitored route, or was taken somewhere within the station complex that wasn't covered by cameras. There's also the simple statistical reality. When a young woman disappears suddenly and completely, foul play is usually involved. Voluntary disappearances are rare and usually leave traces. Accidents that result in complete disappearance are also rare. The most likely explanation, statistically, is that someone harmed Louise. Counter evidence. No witness saw anything suspicious. No one heard Louise scream or call for help. No evidence of an attack or struggle was found at the station. If Louise was abducted or harmed, it happened with remarkable stealth and efficiency, leaving no trace. This is possible, but it requires either extreme luck on the perpetrator's part or careful planning. If Louise was taken from the station, where was she taken? Despite extensive searches, no body has ever been found. No physical evidence linking her to any location has been discovered. For a crime to leave absolutely no trace is unusual. This theory suggests that Louise met someone at the train station, someone she knew or someone who convinced her to leave with them, and that she went willingly. Perhaps she accepted a ride home. Perhaps she was invited somewhere. Perhaps she thought she was going somewhere safe. Supporting this theory, if Louise left voluntarily with someone, it would explain why there was no struggle, no scream, no scene that attracted attention. It would explain why she didn't board her train. She no longer needed to, because someone was giving her a lift, or she had other plans. In 2001, accepting a ride from someone, even a casual acquaintance, would not have been seen as particularly risky by many people. The awareness of stranger danger, of the risks of getting into cars with people you don't know well, was less pronounced than it is today. Perhaps Louise ran into someone she knew from the military community. Perhaps someone offered to drive her home and she accepted, thinking it was easier than waiting for a train. And then, something went wrong. Counter evidence? Louise's friends and family insist she was not the type to get into a car with someone she didn't know well. And if she did know them well, who were they? No one has come forward to say they gave Louise a ride that night. No one has admitted to seeing her after the train station. If Louise left with someone voluntarily, why has she never been heard from again? Even if something bad happened after she got in the car, there should be some evidence, a crime scene, a body, something.